It's Thursday night. Y'all know what we do on Thursday night. The Don Miller Show on YouTube. And again, thank you so much, everyone who's been supporting the show, following us all over the country. We have a big announcement coming up soon. For those who've been asking me, are we coming back to radio? Hell yeah, I want to come back to radio. And I want to come back to radio the way it should be done. So oftentimes we get offered situations, but you can't tell me what to talk about. So until the situation presents itself where we can have a good show without any somebody in my ear telling me what to talk about, we just going to keep doing it the way we're doing it. But great conversation today. Of course, if you have followed the news, shout out to Phil the Podcast Doctor, first of all.
What up?
If you've been following the news in the last few weeks, we have seen a lot of interesting things go down. And over the weekend, of course, there's no way you miss the fact that there was a serious terrorist attack in New Orleans on Bourbon Street. 15 people lost their lives. Many were injured. The authorities at least were able to catch the suspect or the murderer, the POS as I call him, and take him out. Now, again, same day, 24-hour period, Las Vegas, Nevada, someone pulls up in a cyber vehicle in front of the Trump Hotel, explodes the truck. People were injured. The driver did not live. And just a whole bunch of conversations coming out of these two incidents. Both were absolute terrorist attacks. I don't care who tells you they weren't. They're a damn lie. And so when I have these kind of conversations come about, I like to go to people who know what the hell they're talking about. We can sit and talk all day amongst ourselves, but I want to go to pros. So today my guest is a longtime friend of mine. He's a longtime sheriff, almost 50 years in law enforcement, a longtime sheriff in Central Florida, Orange County, Disney. And when you are the sheriff in the county that Disney's in, it behooves you and your team to understand every aspect of how to engage in law enforcement, especially as it relates to international terrorism. He was also the president of the Major County Sheriff's Associations in America. This is an organization where all major sheriff's associations are involved in. He spent years in Afghanistan training people, and he's been teaching about terrorism. I just came back recently from Jordan, where he was in charge of a program to teach the Jordanian police. But he's my friend. He's a great, great, great guy. He was a great sheriff, and he is one of the top terrorism experts, counterterrorism experts in the country. We welcome to the show Kevin Berry. Hey, Sheriff.
Hey, Donnie, how you doing? Happy New Year.
Sheriff, I really called you the other night. Well, you called me first, and I was like, damn, how did Kev know? I've got to talk to him. And I called you back, and we had a conversation. Sheriff, are we safe?
I'd say yes, we are, but you're gonna have to put some question marks on.
Mm-hmm.
The wake up call should have been the attack in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And because of some of the stuff that's gone on the last 4 years, DEI hires, open borders, we're afraid to collect intelligence like we used to because we're afraid we'll offend somebody, Donnie.
Mm-hmm.
And go back to that wake-up call. We should have learned and put everybody on alert. We better watch out what's going on at all our major events, kind of like what's going on Bourbon Street. We always know about New York City and other locations, but the bottom line is nobody talks about it anymore. Nobody even put anything out, even in Central Florida, concerning the German attack at the Holiday Market.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what, folks? Yeah, I live on a spinner board. Sooner or later, that spinner board, that needle, is going to land on someplace. And on the morning of January 1st, it landed in New Orleans.
You know, it's interesting, Sheriff. You and I talk all the time about the fact that people are going about their day, and I believe that many of these agencies that taxpayer money keep going should be more in tune with the safety of the citizens. And when I watch New Orleans, it is amazing how they have in-ground barriers, the barriers that rise up to block traffic from going down Bourbon Street. Yet they weren't working that day. Can you explain to me how does that happen?
Well, that's just, as far as I'm concerned, that's what we call piss poor plan and promotes piss poor performance. And, those things should have been checked out. And if they needed to be repaired, they needed to be repaired.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's face facts also. New Orleans doesn't get the money from the federal government like New York City does.
Right.
And so maybe it's time we rethink once we get the new president in office. We've got to tighten up all these different major cities. New Orleans is a major port. It's got a large Muslim population there, and I'm not picking on the Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
Some of my best friends are Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
But the bottom line is we need to tighten up the ship. And the ship has been running astray for 4 years. And it's time that local law enforcement gets back to collecting intelligence, doing it properly. And if people don't like it, tough. We've got people to protect out here. You can take a look at the last count I knew. Take a look at the mangled 15 bodies in New Orleans if you don't think this stuff can happen here.
And it's interesting you say that, because when I saw that the barriers, the same ones they have in front of the Pentagon, at the White House, and major buildings all across this country, were not working. I was in Chicago. I went home earlier in last year, and outside of the public housing, they have these things that rise up out of the ground. So how the hell can they not be working on a street like Bourbon Street? And if they're not working, you can't use a police car to block that. How about going and get some garbage trucks or something? Would you agree?
Well, and if we knew they weren't working, why don't you go get some concrete barriers? Why don't you go get some, the plastic water barriers?
Mm-hmm.
All of that could be utilized to replace something that's not working. But, like I said earlier, Donnie, it's time that we need to steer the helm in the right direction. We've been playing too much kumbaya.
Yes, sir.
For the last 4 years. People already have forgotten that we have an open border. Mm-hmm. And you have jihad and cartel training camps in South America that train these terrorists.
Mm-hmm.
So we then we even have terrorist camps in our own country.
And that's what I want to talk to you about. You just recently returned from a long stint in Afghanistan and, of course, Jordan, training their law enforcement. Sheriff, how are we taking it so lightly that we already have cells in this country, yet we're acting like that's not true? Why is there no push to aggressively go after these cells?
Well, straight up, Donnie, it's not been on the top 10 list to, we're more interested in, now I'm talking about the alphabet agencies. Mm-hmm. We're more interested in about all that bull crap on January 6th that's still all over the FBI website. Mm-hmm. Maybe after the German attack and other attacks across the country, we should have been focusing a little more on what's going to go on in our own country. You've got major sporting events going on. The Sugar Absolutely. Bowl was already affected. You got the Super Bowl coming
to the same city.
Oh, absolutely.
The Super Bowl is going to be in New Orleans in a couple of weeks, and I'm concerned that if they thought that this attack during a college football playoff game was huge, the Super Bowl is probably one of the most watched sporting events in the world.
Well, Donnie, it's a classic case of, like I said earlier, it's not on everybody's radar list. We're more worried about focusing on things that's going to happen locally. But unfortunately, in this particular case, these people came from out of state. It looks like they came from out of state for the Las Vegas incident, as well as the New Orleans incident. And, now we've got dead people and 30 injured. And now we've got all these major events looking, directly in front of us within the next calendar month. Somebody better get off their ass and start doing something about it.
It's interesting because I've heard a lot of pushback in the last few years on the agencies you just mentioned, the letter agencies, and I'm concerned that the focus has been going in the wrong direction. When I look at this, immediately the FBI come out and say this is not terrorism, and within an hour they come back to the same microphone and pretty much hit us with a oops. and when I saw that, people saw the ISIS flag on the truck. And so I'm trying to figure out, why were they so quick to call it a non-terrorist attack when there was an actual flag representing ISIS on the vehicle?
Donnie, this mentality goes all the way back to the Pulse incident in our own backyard.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes back to how bastardized the FBI has become with the Fort Hood incident.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't call that terrorism. They called it workplace violence.
Mm-hmm.
Now, folks, I'm a cop. So if you got a guy in an Army uniform, a major, running down the hallway with a 5.57 pistol, that kind of, and he's yelling Allah Akbar, that's
Right.
a clue in my nature.
Absolutely. And again, you're right, because I remember initially that was called something else.
Yes, it was called workplace violence. And
Yeah.
you know that I had a nephew by marriage that was
Shot.
involved in that. He was like the second or third one shot at Fort Hood as he was getting ready to go to officer candidate school. He's had a dozen brain surgeries, the whole 9 yards. He's recently written a book. But if it wasn't for a captain in the 1st Cavalry Division, he'd have been out on the street.
Yeah, he had
But
to
kept him
fight.
on
He
the
had to
payroll.
fight for his benefits. I remember that.
Yes.
Yeah, but so when I see this young lady come out, young black lady, and I'm saying to myself, and I want to say to my friends who I've been talking to this about, a lot of black people, I talk about black and white. A lot of people scared to do it, but I'm all right with it. When I saw this young black lady come out and give this interview, and I said to myself when I was watching it, who is this? And then they say she's the SAC, okay, special agent in charge, and she's got a nose ring, and she sounds like she has no idea what she's talking about. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. And then quickly they turn, hey, we come back out. So are you telling me that the things we've been hearing about this agency is true?
Well, and Donnie, you and I both have a lot of friends in the FBI.
Absolutely. And they're all brilliant. They're all smart.
Absolutely. But unfortunately, we have handcuffed those same agents like we've handcuffed our street cops with all this DEI and defund the police and, all that hocus pocus.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hurt us. It's weakened our system.
Right.
I'm not familiar with this lady. I know she's a bright lady, just came from the behavioral science unit. But sometimes, when you're in a situation like this, and this is a major catastrophic event that just went down, first of all, you need a good briefing.
Absolutely.
Second of all, you need to have all your notes in place. And, you could have said, we don't know if it's terrorism yet, but we're looking at it. There's some things that, definitely lean that way. And as soon as we can get the first layers of this investigation done, we're going to come out here and make sure everybody knows what's going on. Now, you and I are old salts.
Yeah, Kev, we go back. You and I go back to a time when we were riding down the highway one night in an unmarked car, you and I, just the two of us, and you were the sheriff of a major county, and a call came over the radio field. A bolo come on the radio, and we're driving down the highway.
What's a bolo?
Be on the lookout.
Okay.
And so I look at the sheriff, and I say, hey, that's the car. And Kev hits the lights, Okay, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Uh-oh.
And he goes after the car, and I'm like, dude, you the sheriff. Let's wait for backup.
Call somebody else.
and and we made the pursuit, and we got the guy. Remember that, Kevin?
Oh yeah,
Because-
and that's not the first time that's happened to me. I remember when the mayor of Eatonville's car was stolen one night, and they put out the BOLO, which stands for Be on the Lookout for, and we look over at the mobile station at Lee Road and I-4, and the bad guy's gassing it up. The next time he looked up from the gas tank, he had a 45 pointed at him, and I said, "You better put that gas back in the holder because you're under arrest."
Oh, you could have let him finish filling it up when you give it back to the mayor.
But you know what's interesting, though? I think we have gone away from cops leading agencies, and now we have these politicians that it is more important for them to be politically correct. And I just think we need to go back to having cops, even in these 3-letter agencies. We need law enforcement officials running, not behavior scientists, but law enforcement officials running these agencies because they think differently.
Well, Donnie, there's always opportunities for advancement in the FBI. I don't want to beat up the lady too much, because if you're part of the behavioral science units, that's a pretty big.
Oh, you're pretty smart. You're smart.
Pretty smart operation right there.
Yeah.
And trust me, I'm FBI trained. I went to leadership and counterterrorism.
What class were you in?
I was in the leadership and counterterrorism 2nd class, FBI National Academy 143rd class, National Executive Institute 18th class. I've been there. I believe in the FBI.
I do too.
But it is time for them to become a law enforcement agency and not a political wing of the Democratic Party.
You know, and we're seeing that too much, and I think people are seeing it now. People who've never paid attention to this, they're seeing it, and I just think it's time to get back to fighting crime and protecting the citizens of this country. And it goes to the second point I want to make, which you're having, and I appreciate you coming on. Listen, feel free to subscribe and like. Check us out Thursday nights, 8 p.m. Right here on YouTube. But I want to talk about what happened at the Trump International Hotel, Las Vegas, Nevada. Someone pulls up a Cybertruck at the valet and explodes the truck in front of the door. And they are saying, we don't really know if this was a terrorist attack. What are your thoughts on that? Same day.
Yeah. Well, since the New Orleans incident, we know that this Tesla truck was rented at the same place as that vehicle for New Orleans.
Yes, same company.
I'd have to say that's probably a clue, Donnie. I'd also have to tell you that after what I saw in the back of the truck, that is, basic gasoline, fireworks, different kind of ordinances that are going to, and it causes damage. It's almost like the old days of the Irish Republican Army blowing up hotels back in Belfast.
Absolutely. And we watch this. Is there anything to do? Because I want to turn the corner. I got so much to talk to you about. Great having you on. You are truly a professor, one of the top experts in the country. So I got several questions I want to hit you with. I'm sure Phil has a question. So when you see that, is there anything we can do to protect against this, or should we just wake up every day like Donnie Miller with a 9mm and just stay vigilant? Is there anything else we can do?
Well, I think we have to get back as citizens of getting wrapped around what's going on in our country. If you remember, after 9/11, you had billboards out. If you see something, say something. There was all kind of campaigns like that. We need to start taking care of our own neighborhoods, our own communities, our own states. We need to quit this is what happens when the system's pendulum swings so far left that everybody's afraid to call. And a good example of that is the San Bernardino incident. where the guys were making, bombs at 2 o'clock in the morning, but the neighbors were afraid to call because they thought it might, offend people.
Right.
Well, folks, it's time to quit being a wimp, and it's time to straighten up, and it is also time to get involved, and let's start protecting our homeland.
Look, I've said for many years, and I'll shout out Holly Holloman, who we love so much. I'm a snitch. I'm gonna tell. If I see something, I'm gonna say something. Okay. I don't want to be that neighbor to not say anything. So just don't do it around me, Phil. You follow me? Because I'm telling you right now, I'm a mandatory reporter. But I want to get to this because it's so bad now that when you talk about safety, you instituted some phenomenal programs in your 4 or 5 terms as sheriff in Orange County. And one I'm concerned about the most is school safety. That's back in the news now, Kevin. School safety is a major issue, and I keep seeing these incidents at schools, and oftentimes the authorities on the campus are not prepared to deal with it. How do we fix that?
Well, Donnie, I'm blessed. I still teach active shooter incident management for NCIER, NCIR, and which is part of the C3 Pathways family. And we go all over the country and teach people in law enforcement, fire, emergency services, and emergency management how to run an operation like that goes down like New York City last night at the bar with the teenagers getting shot.
Yes.
The New Orleans incident, San Bernardino, like we already mentioned. Those are the type of incidents we train people on. And, these law enforcement needs to get back in the game. There are classes that go on, and there's open positions in some of these classes. And why we can't fill them, I'll never understand. And headquarters is in our backyard, Donnie. It's in Oviedo.
You know what's interesting, Sheriff? When you talk about school safety, I'm watching this fight in regards to school safety about who wants to pay the school resource officers, and it's amazing what we pick bogus ass fights about. There's nothing more important. If you don't think that it shouldn't cost, whatever it costs as a parent, if you're one of these idiots who think you want to go back and forth about what it costs to protect your child, then you're a horrible ass parent. But when I'm watching these conversations, Phil, they're going back and forth about who's going to pay.
That's stupid.
Well, Donnie, that's what's going on right now.
Yes.
In Orange County. You've got four or five law enforcement agencies that are trying to set up a deal with the Orange County School Board, and they can't seem to come to pass. Well, with what's going on and with who's coming into office on January 20th, if I was a school board official and I were the cops that were negotiating, I'd get my head out of my fanny and I would get the thing signed.
Absolutely.
So that we can go on protecting our kids.
And it's funny because I don't actually think many of the parents know the fight that is going on with the police and the school systems right now. And I want to spend more time on it. I'm going to start talking a lot more about it on both of my shows. But I can tell you that there should be nothing more important than the safety of our damn children, okay, that we send to these schools. And there's an issue there. And I remember when you were sheriff and the whole school resource conversation came about, you instituted a lot of programs that in today's policing environment, you would be canceled. You would be canceled, Kevin.
Well,
okay?
And again, Donnie, when you're a leader, you need to lead. And we need more leaders like Winston Churchill. We need more leaders like George Patton. No bullcrap kind of people.
Yeah.
And law enforcement needs that. And we don't have it. we have too many take your knee and hug a thug and all that kind of crap, and that don't go over with this bird here.
No, it's interesting you say that because there was a program you instituted that in the black community, you were like a hero. I'll never forget this, Phil. You weren't here then. There was a group, they called them the Duke Boys, that came under Kevin Berry as sheriff of Orange County, and you're policing properly when the street thugs are afraid of the police. If the street thugs aren't afraid of the police, you got a problem. And you instituted, I think the first guy in charge was our good friend, rest in peace, Malone Stewart. Was Malone the first guy in charge of the Duke Boys?
Well, yeah, actually, Donnie, that started under Gallagher, and
I know it's on but you enhanced it.
We enhanced it, and Malone was part of it, and then our friend Jim Holloman,
Jimmy,
was very involved in it.
Yeah.
And my sister was a Duke girl.
I remember very well. and what they would do, Phil, they would sit on a house and watch slowly for hours and hours, and they would be in the back of a U-Haul truck, Phil.
What?
Yes, for hours, right, Kevin? And
sometimes days, Donnie.
Yes, yeah. And they would, and then when they jump out, it's a wrap. They built up enough evidence to shut the whole situation down. And I'm telling you, I felt so much safer in the community we had this type of policing, because when it becomes a crisis, this Mayberry RFD policing just don't work. You gotta change the game.
Well,
Adley just said, I remember the Duke Boys. They didn't mess around. James P.J. Brown, oh yeah, remember the Duke Boys. Thank you so much, everybody, for our listeners. They remember the Duke Boys, Sheriff. And
then we built one on top of the Duke Boys, was the felony squad.
Remember them dudes? Who was in charge of that?
I think all of that has been reduced into what they call a tactical unit now.
But no, who? Let me think. Who was over there?
That was Brian Margison and Mark Pilkington. And here's one for Phil, who's learning about this stuff.
Uh-huh.
Our first major felony squad was a murder suspect out of Southwest Florida.
Yes.
And he came up, and we told him this unit is not a public relations unit. This is a unit that is going to go out there and enforce the law.
Absolutely.
When we tell you to do something, you better do it. Mm-hmm. Well, this guy murdered a person in Southwest Florida, came up to the Primrose bowling alley in Orlando. He decided to take off running. He got hit with my All-American 240-pound two-lane lineman. He got clotheslined. He was knocked out so bad, I was able to drive from my office to the place where he was knocked out at the bowling alley, and we held a press conference. And Donnie,
he was still asleep,
and he was being looked at by the medical people.
Absolutely.
And then I took the press and I showed them what we're all about.
Absolutely.
We went to his car. We opened up his car. There was a gun in the front seat. There was a gun on each side of the front seats. Mm-hmm. There was guns in the back.
Yep.
And we told him this is not a public relations unit, and of course you remember my famous comment I used to tell people: don't mess around, because we're going to put something on your ass Ajax won't take.
It's funny because I'm listening to how many people who live in Central Florida throw a thumbs up to our good friend over in Polk County, Grady Judd. And I'm telling you, Kevin Berry was the first Grady Judd.
Okay, because that's who I know. Grady, he's got stories. So this reminds me of that.
Yeah. Grady Judd was standing next to me, Donnie, when he made his statement about the 68 bullets.
And let's tell that story, because this is brilliant policing. Tell that story, Kevin.
They went after an illegal alien, Jamaican drug dealer.
Yep.
The Jamaican drug dealer killed a cop, killed a canine, shot another cop, shot at two Lakeland police officers. Grady Judd called for assistance. We sent them about 400 SWAT officers and 6 armored vehicles, and we cordoned the area off for 24 hours.
I remember.
And then the suspect pops his head out. My SWAT team was to the right of Polk County. Osceola and Seminole were to the left. I think Lake County's right up in there too.
Mm-hmm.
And they popped out, and he came out shooting, and they popped him 68 times.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, "Well, what about isn't that excessive?" And they asked
Why'd you
him,
shoot him 68 times?
and he said, "Guess we ran out of bullets." And
Phil, you remember that?
That was when I first moved here. I'm like,
folks,
dang, Florida don't play.
Right.
and Florida, there's several there. To our credit, there's several sheriffs in Florida that are not putting up with a whole lot of hocus pocus, because it's just like, it's time to start protecting your own family.
Absolutely.
Start tightening up your own houses.
Mm-hmm.
We got all these, we got all these illegals around. They're when I say illegals, we also got homeless people and what have you. Not every homeless person is a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
But folks, I'm here to tell you, if you don't lock the doors, if you don't turn on your button cameras and things like that, you're not doing much for the family.
Right.
And I'm a firm believer that you come into my house. I used to tell this in a speech. I said the first thing you got to do is get through my wife's runaway dogs, because they're going to bark. The second thing,
Mm-hmm.
you got to get through the alarm. The third thing is you got to get through my wife, because she ain't going to let anybody mess with any of her kids and now grandkids.
Mm-hmm.
But then, folks, I'm going to tell you something. You wake me up at 2:00 in the morning, you ain't supposed to be in the house. I ain't coming at you with an asp. I'm going to come at you with a Glock 21, and it'll make you look like a fishing weight being tossed into the lake.
And I think we all should have that. Sheriff, I want to say the Honorable Judge Alicia Lattimore said hello. She's watching the show tonight. Judge Lattimore spent a lot of time on the criminal bench. She was a good friend of yours and actually mine as well. And Judge Belvin Perry. And that's when we had judges who understood the law enforcement agency's position. Now, what do you think about these activist judges on the bench now that is pitting themselves every day in courtrooms across this country against law enforcement?
Well, it's not only against law enforcement, it's against the victims and the decency of a community.
Mm-hmm.
And these are all those puppets that Soros has paid for and what have you. I was blessed. I had Belvin Perry as the chief judge.
Mm-hmm.
His daddy was one of the first black cops in Orlando, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And his number 2 guy was Dick Conrad.
Mm-hmm.
They used to ride with me on Friday night. If they weren't riding with me, it would be you or some of the other business people.
Yes, yeah.
So, I called up Belvin. I said, listen, with all this stuff on 9/11, I can't judge shop. I said, Kevin, I'll never forget what he said. He says, Kevin, all you need to do is call Dick Conrad or me.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
I remember Dick Conrad, who was a great friend of mine, longtime judge who supported law enforcement, who understood the job that law enforcement was doing, as Chief Judge Perry and Judge Lattimore. And it's amazing. And I remember when Judge Lattimore first went on the bench, she rode with you, and she saw it up close and personal, and she was like, wow, because when they get in front of judges, when many of these criminals get in front of the judges, it's a whole different story. I was treated unfairly, Your Honor. And then you see it. I think anybody going to the bench should ride with law enforcement on a late night ride. Not middle of the day, but a late night ride, Sheriff. What do you think of that?
Oh, totally agree with you. I even had back in the day, I had the public defender rode with me. And we used to sell my Friday night rides for, for different charities.
Yeah.
And his charity was, I think it was the Canine Association. Or
That was
something
Bob,
like that.
right? Bob Wesley.
Yes,
Yes,
Bob rode with me, and he got a different view, and we got
sure
along
did.
great.
I remember when he
And
told me, he was like, "Damn, riding with law enforcement makes my job a little more difficult because you
yep.
see it then."
Well, and it shouldn't end there. It should be your state attorneys at the
Yes.
misdemeanor level, the felony level should be the state attorney themselves.
Hmm.
And we need to get back to being, you know, tough on crime. But at the same time, if somebody makes a mistake and they
Hmm.
commit a nonviolent felony, I'm all for using those programs where they can. It's called restorative justice.
Yes.
Utilize them
Hmm.
and let them get a second chance.
Hmm.
But that doesn't happen with people that have got 13 armed robberies and 7 gun violations.
Wait, I got a question about that. How are these people still like? How are they out? How are they not in prison forever?
Well,
I
part
know
of the
someone got like
problem
70
is,
felonies.
well, part of the problem is, well, part of the problem is the current president just pardoned a whole bunch of them. But at the same time, you got situations where uh, the 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 people need. Uh, it goes back to uh, every everything is given to the bad guy, and no attention is being paid to the victim. All your victim services, all your are all underfunded compared to you know the people that are committing the crimes, and it's a joke.
Hmm.
And you know, uh, how many times, Donnie, do we need to bring back people that have been on death row for 30 years,
Hmm.
and we're paying about $74,000 a year for them to sit on their butts in prison? If the DNA is matched and there's no more, uh, you know, no more appeals,
Hmm.
then folks with, you know, at one time we had like 300 waiting in
Hmm.
Florida. It may be higher now.
You know what? And you're right. And that the message that sends.
Huh.
We just got a message from a judge that said it is called problem solving court now. Thank you. I'm glad that we have problem solving court. I agree with what you're saying. But if you've accumulated 15, 20 felonies, there is you should not be out here. And it's amazing when I see these guys get arrested and then they say, well, he had 28 felonies. How the hell you got 28 felonies, Phil, and you're still out here?
Well, look what we let into this country illegally.
Yeah.
Look at all the Venezuelan gangs. Look at all the hell they're creating in New York City and Colorado and places.
Yes.
I
Yep.
mean, we have got the thugs running the show, and the cops have got their hands tied. But I got a funny feeling with Patel and some others that are going to come into play. Trump ain't going to play that game.
Well, speaking of the border, it's interesting you brought that up, Kevin, because I want to talk to you about the border. When I'm looking at the border, it is really interesting that our allies, that we're talking open borders, but none of our allies have open borders. Israel doesn't have open borders, Kevin.
Nope.
Okay?
Jordan doesn't have open
Jordan
borders.
at all. So you
Uh,
just came back from Jordan, training the law enforcement in Jordan for several years. Talk to me when they look at us who are over here championing the most ridiculous nonsense called open borders. How do they see us, Kevin?
they look at us and try to figure out how stupid we really are.
Mm.
What needs to be restored at the Department of State and also the Department of Defense is we need programs that are realistic. We
Mm.
got too many people sitting at the Pentagon, also sitting at the Department of State, and they want to solve everything by buying computers and biometrics and all that crap. And most of those countries don't even want anything like that. They need what caught these bad guys in New Orleans. They need license plate readers. They need cameras. They need the ability to connect all that information so that they can track people on an investigation. That's what we need to get back to also.
You know, it's interesting because I'm looking at the number of illegals in this country, and the amount of them. And I had this conversation with a friend of mine the other day, smoking a cigar. He's retired after 43 years working for the federal government in law enforcement. And he says anybody who doesn't believe that there are more criminals coming across the border than nice families, then you're out of your damn mind. Can we talk a bit about that? I'm watching the number of military-aged Chinese men. Should we be concerned about that?
And the answer to that is a big hell yeah, kind of like the Steve Austin era in wrestling. Let me hear a hell yeah for that. Because,
Give me a hell yeah.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you something. That's an issue. It's also an issue where China's buying up our farmland. Mm-hmm. It's also an issue. Why is Bill Gates buying up all our farmland and trying to turn that farmland over to other entities? These are all kind of things that I think need to be touched on with the new administration. Let me tell you, look at the balloon incident. The balloon crosses all over the United States, and we don't do anything. After going through all kind of secret airspace, we wait till it gets out in the ocean and we finally take it down.
So explain that to me, right? So that couldn't happen anywhere else. Russia is shooting planes out the sky 100 miles from their border. How do we let a balloon fly all the way across our country?
Because we got people that have no intestinal fortitude to do what is right for this country. And I think we the people have spoke in this last election, Donnie, because we want to get back to some sense of common sense.
Okay.
And I think that's what's going to take. I think, I think you're going to see that Trump's cabinet needs to go in there and they need to clean house. I laugh every day watching Ramaswamy and Elon Musk. We've got people, listen, we got as many people in the Pentagon today as we had when they were using 8 sheets of carbon paper in World War II. And we got all this technology. How about putting some of them people back on the front lines?
You know, it's interesting you say that because I was stunned on my first visit to the Pentagon. There's thousands of people who work there, and they're all officers. So when you got thousands of officers sitting in an office, you ask yourself the question, what do they do? And so I want to talk to you quickly. You just mentioned something interesting, right? Because I'm looking at what's happening in this country. I'm looking at the fact of one of my listeners just sent me this message. Have we gotten to a place in law enforcement where there are people who shouldn't even be police officers slipping through the cracks?
Yes, we have. And a lot of times they could be solid law enforcement officers, but we whittled down their basic training. We don't want them to get involved. We want them to sit under a tree, don't write tickets, don't get involved, don't do any intelligence-led policing because we don't want to upset the apple cart. We have got all of that in play right here in our own backyard. So it's time that we get real law enforcement on the street. Donnie, you can be tough on crime, but you can be a compassionate leader also, and you can teach your people the same thing.
You know, Kevin, you've traveled the country. You have been in charge of national organizations as it relates to law enforcement. I want to ask a question from one of our listeners real quick, and this threw me off in a bad way. There was an incident last year of a young lady by the name of Sonia Massey who was absolutely wide open. You saw the mental illness that was killed by a police officer who had worked at 6 agencies, who had been fired from several agencies. And he had since been indicted for that killing. How do guys like that continue to leave an agency? Kevin, I remember you had to fire a couple of people, right? How do guys like this go into another agency and just start like from scratch even though their record at the previous agency had been a shit record. How do we protect against that?
Well, first of all, if they go from state to state, there ought to be a background investigation, a thorough background investigation done. And if you have to send your investigators out to some of those locations and meet with some of the people, they need to do that.
Okay.
That is right off the bat. We also need to get rid of the good old boy system, because we still have that. And a lot of bad cops will go from one state to another, and nobody ever checks what happened in the state. And I think that's going to be one of those areas that needs to be taken a look at. You asked me, you mentioned something about Jordan. I'll give you an example. You said, well, what do you think does Jordan think about us? Well, I walked in one day after they had 20 of their people, two border cops and 2 soldiers were killed and shot on the northern border of Jordan by the Syrian army drug dealers. And they asked me, what would you do? And I said, I would put 300 cops out there. And the next time they came over, there's no such thing as warning shots or anything like that. You get one chance to disarm and surrender, or it's game on. Well, the king adopted that policy.
Great. And
a week
you told
later,
him that. Yeah.
Yes. And a week later, it happened again. And this time it was the cops 30, and the bad cops lost nobody. Bad guys lost 30.
And I know people are talking about compassion, but criminals don't have compassion. Criminals are criminals. Criminals live in a mindset. And it's amazing to me, people who have not dealt up close and personal with people who've accepted this criminal mindset, that I don't give a shit about, listen to me. I knew the young lady that Markeith Lloyd stood over and murdered. She was a good cop, Kevin.
Yeah.
Deborah was a good cop, right? He stood over her, Phil, and he murdered her. And anybody don't think that he should have fallen in line with the extreme quick death penalty should lose their job. Any prosecutor. This is, see, again, in the black community, we are so full of shit sometimes to ourselves, right? This is a good cop. This is a resident of this community. This is someone who grew up in this community, murdered by a piece of shit. And then there were people saying, well, I don't believe it. It's not about this guy. There are people who shouldn't be among us. And we got to raise our hand as black people who complain about the police so much, that when you do this, when you cross this line, friend or foe or family, you got to go.
Well, and Donnie, I think that pendulum's already there.
Yes.
Look at the number of blacks, Hispanics, Indians, Muslims that voted for Trump. I think they're already there. And I think we're going to get back to some, what I call common sense law enforcement. It's also common sense ability to deal with things in our own community. And I think you're going to see that. Now, is it going to happen overnight? No. But we got to do something. And I really don't want to talk politics.
Yeah, but you can't talk policing now without talking politics, Kevin.
Well, I'm going to tell you, if any of those Republicans screw up this thing on January 3rd, and then making sure Trump gets in office by voting on him the 6th, any of those dodos get out of line, they can hire an old retired sheriff out of this Central Florida area, and I'll go up there and give him a boot through the goalpost of life.
Well, speaking of that, I have about 9 of my people who sent me messages who are suggesting that you come out of retirement and consider being the sheriff in Orange County again. What are your thoughts?
And I've got 5 grandkids, and I got 2 more on the way. There are things that I like to do, and I'm doing that. I'm doing this critical.
Hold on, Phil. Put that back up. We just saw some. I hope so because we sure need you. One of our listeners said they hope so. Okay, go ahead. So you got five
just,
grandkids. You got five
they're-
grandkids.
I've got 5 grandkids and 2 more on the way. I'm 67 and I'm a dinosaur. And you know, Orange County is not the same county, Donnie, that I left when I retired.
You know it's interesting. So you have a son that's currently law enforcement in beautiful Richland County, Columbia, South Carolina, correct?
Yes, sir.
And
SWAT cop.
yeah. How's he doing?
Doing good. And
Yeah.
he works for the Grady Judd of South Carolina.
Sure does.
Leon Lott. He don't
Yeah.
play.
I love Sheriff.
Leon Lott is top door. He was sheriff of the year last year nationally.
Yep.
He just lost a canine. They've had like 3 or 4 canines killed this year.
Right.
And he got out there and says, this is who we're looking for. And the subject was a 13-year-old who killed the dog, shot and killed the dog. And they knew there was a driver involved. They put his name out. And his mama called and said,
Called him in.
Mama
So did.
yeah, he says he'll be checking into your station tomorrow morning.
Absolutely, and it's amazing. I want to talk politics really quickly. When you were the sheriff in Orange County, Florida, it's funny now how you see when people leaders in law enforcement now, it's kind of iffy and the direction and how the people feel. But I remember you getting an overwhelming number. Your support in the black community was overwhelming. As I would say, greater than the black sheriff who you supported, who you pushed my ass into supporting after you left.
Well,
you did that, Kevin. You so did.
I was blessed. I had, we had some incredible people back then.
Yeah.
The Reverend Judge and
Pastor Judge was wonderful.
We worked the community. We also, about every 6-7 months, we would have a all hands pastors meeting
Absolutely.
at the Big Baptist Church because sheriff can't do it alone.
Right.
Can't be the only voice. And we'd get black, white, brown,
everybody.
yellow, red. It
Pastor
didn't matter
Henry.
what
Pastor Henry.
Oh, and we filled that place for breakfast.
I was there.
And they would get a law enforcement briefing on what's going on with gangs, guns, and drugs. And they went out and were part of the reason why. You remember the pastors that walked the streets in Apopka?
Yes. Yes. I remember Pastor. As a matter of fact, I am a member at the church where, yes, I remember Pastor Maxwell, Freddie Maxwell. You remember? Yeah, he was a good friend of yours.
Then there was Reverend Washington up in Apopka.
Yes.
They would run. The bad guys would run away from the pastors before they ran away from the cops.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't see that now.
No. And this is why I say we got to get our communities engaged again. I'm loving what I'm seeing in Chicago right now.
Absolutely.
You've got people of all color and creed stand up and say, I'm tired of the illegals. I'm tired of them camping out in hotels, in our schools, and in our police and fire stations. Get them out of here. And why are we paying millions and millions and millions of dollars to take care of this crap? And this is all because we have an inept federal government that's allowed it to happen.
It's funny you bring Chicago up. You and I both known the leadership in the Chicago Police Department for many years. They were your friends as well as they were my friends. And, I'm amazed when I see how many black people in Chicago who have really stood up and said, wait a minute, you're bringing these people here. You're giving them more money than you're giving the homeless veterans.
Yep.
And they're wreaking havoc in our communities. And when the police come, because this is a sanctuary city, they can't even be arrested.
And let me tell you how you can straighten this out in about day one. You get your Homeland Security guy, the czar, Holman, in there, and you tell, and you have a city like San Francisco or Chicago. Well, we don't want to play. We're not going to allow you to get the retainers and this, that. Cut off every stinking cent of federal funding. Let's see how long that lasts.
You know, it's interesting because I'm watching Holman, who is going to be in charge of Homeland Security in the new administration. And that's the kind of police I like. You know what I mean? This dude's like, you're going back. We're sending everybody back. And it's amazing to me when I watch black people who have been drawn into this ridiculous-ass conversation about these people who are coming here who have not sold anything into this system. They paid a damn thing, are coming here getting more than people who built this country.
Yep.
And you're cheering them on? I've never seen this level of ridiculousness in my life.
Well,
send them all back. Go home.
Well, and one of the other stories, since I was in that particular region of the world with Afghanistan and Jordan, this hocus pocus of bringing all the Palestinians here unchecked, and now they protest every major incident. Anytime Israel wants to do something, they want to cause unrest. They want to break the laws, and the cops need to get tough with them. And if you get caught and you're here on a student visa and you want to violate our laws, then you need to get arrested and you need to lose your student visa and your butt needs to go back from the country you came from.
Absolutely. No question about it, because that is what happens in France, in England, in Portugal, in any other country.
Listen, Donnie, we host the SWAT roundup every year here.
We had some good times there. Had some great times.
We got teams from all over the world come in here, and you sit around at night after the competition and the training, and you talk to them, and you find out what really goes on that you don't see on our media front. And Hungary, you got a prime minister who stood up to the German chancellor and said, "Hey, it ain't going to happen that way here,"
right?
Because they had Hungarian cops attacked because they were delivering water bottles and food to these people, but they didn't like the food and they didn't want to drink just water. And he said, well, I got something better for that. And he changed the way they do it. They got people guarding the borders. They don't put up with any crap. It's the same in Czechoslovakia, and it needs, if we can do this for all our allies and help them, why aren't we helping ourselves?
And I think that is a great ending. Kevin, thank you so much. Hey, how can everybody follow you on social media, see what you're talking about? Because you hit some great points often.
Hey, Barry Public Safety Group. I'm on Facebook. And, if there's something to talk about, and you know me, Donnie, I'm like you. I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
No, not at all. Well, thank you so much.
We appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Well, Kevin, tell the family I said hello, especially Rebecca, and I hope to have you again soon. Thank you so much, Sheriff.
And I'll come down to the station this next time.
Next time you're sitting here with me, absolutely. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Be safe.
Thank you. Phil, you know what's amazing, Phil? I'm watching what's happening all across the country, and I ask myself more than I probably should. What's with the law enforcement? And I'm looking at some of the leadership in law enforcement, and they're all politicians. We need cops to run cop agencies.
When do you think that, when did that change happen?
I think it probably 08, 10, 11, 12, because we need cops to run police agencies. Grady Judd's a cop. Chitwood's a cop. Okay? The guy over in Brevard County, he's a cop. And when we get these politicians and put them in charge of these agencies, and they're working hard to be politically correct and not offend anybody, and I'm seeing these agencies that are led by politicians or political guys, and I shake my head because the criminals are eating this shit up. They love it. You go to Polk County and clown. See how that's going to work out for you. Grady Judd is known from Maine to Mississippi because you can't go to his county and carry on ridiculousness.
Nope.
I am concerned when I see a sheriff in a suit. I want to see a sheriff in a uniform. I recall many nights riding with Kevin Berry. Every Friday and Saturday he worked. As the sheriff, he worked Monday through Friday in an office at the command center. But on Friday and Saturday nights, at least till 1 a.m., 2 a.m., he was in an unmarked vehicle on the street working as a police officer. And the morale in that agency was pretty damn high because it's easy to work for a guy that you know he's got your back. And I just want to get back to that, man. And I'm sure there are people like, well, I rose to this level. I ain't got to be out here in the streets. But I'm telling you, the morale in many of these agencies has gone to shit. How do we fix it? We put cops to run cop agencies. Again, thank you so much, everybody. Thursday night, the Don Miller Show, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We got a lot to talk about. Next week's going to be a phenomenal conversation. I'll start posting on it in the next few days, but it's going to be one of those conversations for the ages. I just want to thank you very much. Subscribe and like. Tell your friends, please subscribe and like. Don't forget your boy.
Great
subscribe
show.
and like. We appreciate it. Follow Phil, the podcast doctor. Follow D'Amica Page. Okay. Follow the entire team. We got a big deal coming up soon. Shout out to all of those who make this happen. We appreciate you. We love you so much. So for now, I'm out of here. Good night, everybody. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Bye-bye, y'all.